Now let's go beyond the headlines to a special advisor to President Tinubu on media and public communication, Mr. Sunday Dare. Thank you for joining us on the program this evening. I'm looking at your post now where you describe the reshuffle as a deliberate, forward-looking plan to re-energize the military. Walk us through the specific indicators here or metrics that the presidency considered that necessitated this change.
I think it comes from the orientation and the constitutional powers imbued in the president and commander-in-chief. And of course, you know that President Tinubu understands that security is not static, but security demands innovation, demands agility, and also demands renewal. And it is from that position that you have a commander-in-chief view the security of the country from a very comprehensive approach. And that's what we have seen. There's a constant review, a constant need to consider what is necessary to enhance and to strengthen the security architecture of any country, depending on so many factors. So many factors determine that. And the President Commander-in-Chief has access to critical security briefings that most of us do not. And based on that, he's able to make critical judgments that are timely, that are comprehensive, and that are desirable. And that's what we've seen in this instance.
You know, it's the second full-scale shake-up of service chiefs under this administration in a little over 2 years. Does this frequency suggest that the first round of appointments fell short of expectations? Would you say that this reshuffle was driven by their failure to deliver based on Mr. President's expectation?
Well, I don't think so. We look at previous administrations, whether civilian or military. We have had reshuffles, we have had changes made. And these changes and reshuffles are determined by the currency of what's happening. We have a country that was inherited facing challenges of banditry, kidnapping, insurgency, and organized crime. And with the advent of ISIS, Boko Haram, consistently attacking us through the borders, you have to make sure that you bring your best men to bear. When you look at these new service chiefs, and in the statement that made the changes, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was clear in thanking the outgoing service chiefs for their dedication and their commitment. He really thanked them for the work they had done. But then it was time to move on. And when you look at these new service chiefs, they are tested. They've been in the theater, they're theater commanders. You look at the Hardin Kai operation, you look at Adarin Kai operation, you look at the Udoka operation in the Southeast. These men have been in the theater of war. And at this point, like I said, the president understands that security is not static. It also depends on who the commander-in-chief is. Certain commander-in-chiefs will wait longer to take that bold and decisive step, but other commander-in-chiefs will do what is necessary to safeguard the security of the country. That's what we've seen. And I said much earlier, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu understands that security is not static. And when you look at the theory of securitization in international relations, security is not static. There's no timeline that, oh, you wait 1 year, you wait 2 years, you make changes once or twice during your particular period. No, it is determined by the reports, by the developments that you see. So he understands the need for agility, there's a need for renewal, and there's a need for innovation.
I hear you clearly, and it fits well into the narrative we've heard from the presidency in the past days. But I would think that there were also benchmarks of performance for the service chiefs. Were they met? How, for instance, do you assess conversations online on whether or not the previous administration, or rather the previous leadership of the military, underperformed?
Well, you know, again, I'm going to put that at the table of the President Commander-in-Chief. I am not opportune to have the briefings that he has. But as the president of the country, he has access to timely and critical information upon which he bases his decisions. Don't also forget that this is not done in isolation. There are various levels of consultations. You have the NI, you have the DSS, you have the police, you have the military commands. A lot of reports coming in. So this decision was not taken in a vacuum. It was well informed and it was timely. And if you know the president, he's not somebody that takes decisions like this. He's not flippant with decisions like this. It was well thought out. It was desirable. It was timely.
I've had some civil societies, applauding Mr. President for this move, mainly based on their own evaluation of the performance of the previous service chiefs. Two of the previous set of chiefs were retained. As we now know, one of them in a new and higher role. There are conversations as to whether or not there was a message, that was a message that some of the old guard had performed well, while others didn't. But I want to raise this with you very quickly, Mr. Dare, because the military has officially denied rumors of a failed coup plot linked in some reports to the cancellation of the 65th Independence Day parade. Some observers, however, believe the timing of this reshuffle suggests it may have been at least partially driven by loyalty concerns. What's the president's official position on this?
Well, I think we're going to stay with the narrative of the military because they are the ones constitutionally empowered to secure this country. They are given the resources they need. They are given the ammunitions they need, the firepower they need, the intelligence backing they need. So when the military high command comes to say, these are the reasons why the developments we have, we're going to stay with that narrative because that's the brief that is out there. Now, until the military comes forward with a different narrative, we're going to stay with that narrative. And you talked about some being retained. There's also the need to have institutional memory to maintain a balance. So, like I said, these decisions are not taken on the flip. For the person that was retained, Chief of Defense Intelligence, there is a need to maintain that institutional memory and also the balance that is necessary. And you see, you talk about what is going on online. You have also seen that for the first time, you have a president who has been able to balance the appointments such that all the geopolitical parts of this country, they are now going to be at the table when the issues of security concerning this country. And security, like the president always says, President Bola Tinubu says, economic development is impeded when there is insecurity. So security is a top agenda when it comes to social development, economic development, educational development. Security is a top agenda. And right now we have every geopolitical section of this country at the table, which has never happened in a very long time.
There's a new slant to how security is perceived in Nigeria, and I'm sure you're following the story very closely. In the Middle Belt, for instance, especially Plateau, we continue to hear the narrative of Christian genocide at the hands of militant header groups. It's again been emphasized by a recent video of a clergyman whose people have been killed. Government, on the other hand, has denied this narrative. But is there a sense to which the presidency is concerned about how locals feel about this, especially when you now hear from individuals who are supposed to lead, who are religious leaders, who are point leaders in these communities, and they keep saying these things and showing proof, playing to the emotional substance of their own reality as of today?
Well, the narrative out there, of course, started by the American lawmakers, Ted Cruz and Bill Mayer and others. The narrative, the data does not support the narrative. And when you go look underneath, you see the work of lobbyists and you see a deliberate twist of the facts. The facts out there does not support the figures they're putting out there. That's important. We also know for sure in this country, we all live in this country, that when there's banditry and kidnapping, there's no discrimination between a Christian and a Muslim. Secondly, what is really the definition of genocide? It's clearly stated when you look at the ICC, International Criminal Court. Do we have a Kigalian situation in our country? Remember the book that was written, The Road to Kigali, when we had the crisis, the genocide in Kigali? Do we have the features of Kigali? Do we have that proportion in our country? We do not. So when we have lawmakers who have a clear agenda, using the power of the pulpit, the bully pulpit, to push out numbers there that are not correct, we also have the right to push back. And we have been able to push back so far because we're saying the narrative is not supported by facts on the ground. There is no genocide in this country. And who is better suited to make that pronouncement than the president, an elected president, the commander-in-chief, Weri, I was right there, when he said very categorically, there is no persecution or deliberate genocide. When you have genocide, it's a well-planned, funded, orchestrated plan that is consistent over time, and you will see the numbers. We don't have that situation in this country, and that narrative, that label on this country about genocide will not stick. But that's not to say that we have instances of Christians and Muslims being killed, churches being burnt, mosques being burnt. Absolutely. In America, do you know how many Christians are killed in America? You can check the data. Has there been an allegation of genocide in America? So when you look beneath what is happening right now, is a deliberate, funded attack with political motives. And you will see the approach of this president to say, we're going to be level-headed. We're going to confront this narrative with facts. We're going to continue to work with leaders from both faith, but we will make sure that the fight against insurgency, which is not discriminatory against Christians or Muslims, is prosecuted in such a way that what determines your security and protection is not even your religion or ethnicity, but the fact that you're a Nigerian citizen, and under the Nigerian constitution, the president has sworn to an oath to protect the lives and property of every Nigerian citizen. And that's what's important at this point.
So genocide aside, the reality that stares us in the face, especially from states like Plateau, is that there are still attacks on certain communities. People are still being killed. Lands are still being taken. What is the expectation of this new military leadership? How do you expect them to engage these communities so as to not only fight violence, but also restore public confidence? Because we've seen protests where locals have said, you know what, we don't want military personnel here. Give us mobile policemen.
I expect that they would draw largely from their experience. When you look at their profile, each of their profile, I did a piece today in The Nation, at the back of the Nation newspapers, and it was deliberate. I took each of the service chiefs and I looked at their background. The chief of army staff, for instance, has been a theater commander in the Northeast, Maiduguri. He has requisite experience. He has led the Adankai operation, which is, of course, very powerful to mop up to a very large extent, they're expected to draw their intelligence on their experience. You look at Aneke, for instance. It was part of the Udoka in the Southeast, the operation. Then you look at we expect that because these people have been at the forefront of counter-insurgency operations, they will draw on their experiences to be able to work together to know how to deal with these issues. For Plateau, for instance, it's been ongoing for a while, and separate approaches have taken place. We're getting to a point now that at least a final plan to resolve the crisis in Plateau will be onboarded. Don't forget, the Plateau crisis is not even deeply religious. It's a mixture of religion, ethnicity, land ownership, farmer headers. This thing is not as simple as saying it's Christian against Muslims. There are underlying factors that are really strong. But I think the president expects that these new service chiefs, looking at their profiles, will draw their experiences to be able to come forth with a plan that will abate this crisis.
I think it was last week, I spoke with two security experts, one of them a retired brigadier general from Plateau, and they both laid the blames at the table of the governors. They are saying that it appears the governors aren't doing enough. What are they doing with their security votes? How well are they engaging, their local security infrastructure? Are they financing it as it should? Walk us through what you make of the current collaboration How much support do you think subnationals are giving government at the center to be able to nip this in the bud?
I think under President Tinubu, we have seen an improvement in the collaboration between the subnationals and the center. And especially when you have a president that does not pull his punches. In the case of Plateau, when 3 months ago we had more attacks, the president was quite blunt, and he told the governor of Plateau State to take charge. He said, you need to be neutral and confront the issues as they are. I lived in Plateau, and I understand what's going on there. But beyond that, the governors, like you rightly said, are the chief security officers of the states. And there's a need for them to be very neutral in whatever is happening and causing the conflicts. But beyond that, to provide very authentic and actionable reports and information that can help the center in deployments that are necessary. Where the narrative is wrong, where the reasons put forward are wrong, it's going to be impossible for the center to make necessary deployments to support them. And I do agree with you. The governors have an important role in this security architecture. And we expect that the service chiefs will engage these governors more to understand what the problems are, who are the protagonists, who are the antagonists, who are the stakeholders. Because some, as it's often said, it's better to judge than to war.
We have about 2 more minutes. There are quite a number of stories you have been excited, that your government has been excited about recently, one of which is that Nigeria has been delisted from the Financial Action Task Force grey list after 2 years of reforms. But critics argue that while that exists, there is still you talked about how the exit boosts investor confidence, and what have you. But they say there are still financial crimes, illicit financial flows, terrorism financing that thrive domestically. So how do you reconcile this international validation with the realities on ground?
Well, let's stick with the international validation. That validation is not zero sum. It does not say, 100%. There's no country, even in America, even in the UK, even in Canada, you still have that. But they're saying Nigeria has done well in its monitoring, in its curtailment, in its policies, where we have had the CBN, the NFIU, the police authority, the finance ministry. They've been able to work in concert, building a synergy that has helped to clean up our system. We have moved from where we were totally blacklisted on that grey list to a point where they have seen a deliberate effort, the transparency of the Tinubu administration in dealing with terrorism financing, which is major. And I think it's something that should be celebrated. Now, does that mean that we don't still have terrorism financing? We still have. But this country has put in place the necessary instruments that will curtail that to the barest minimum. It's like saying crimes. No, you cannot outlaw crime. There's no country that is cured of crimes as we speak. You just make that continuous effort. And I think it's significant that under this administration, we have seen transparency at work. We have seen the numbers change on several fronts, from inflation tipping down, from our foreign reserves. So many positives in less than 3 years, and we must recognize that. What about the economy turning around, the recovery of the economy? We're looking at a 4.3% GDP. By 2027, we're looking at a 9 to 10% GDP. And I think that's recognizable. And that's only possible because you have in the driving seat a president that understands the tenets of 21st century economics. And that's why we are where we are today.
So the presidency credits this success to interagency coordination led by the NFIU. We've seen past efforts often faltered once international pressure eases. So we're expecting to see concrete safeguards from the Tinubu administration to ensure that Nigeria doesn't slip back into non-compliance or future blacklisting. But we have completely run out of time, Mr. Dare. Perhaps it's a sign that you should come on this show more often. And we're going to find time to discuss it later. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you too for being on the show, everyone. Remember, you can watch it again at midnight and 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. See you again soon.